We got anyone coming?
Yeah, they're coming in. Yep. Yeah, everybody's coming in.
Pinhel Da, everybody. Lovely to see you. Curator, welcome here from Disability Arts Cymru. Ruth Fabi, the director, speaking. I've got longish greying dark hair. I'm wearing big glasses and a sort of deep green top. All the speakers, if they can remember to do a little bit of audio description before you start, that would be great. I've got to do the boring bits here and just talk about Zoom protocols. We are going to be doing it in two halves. We have presentations, and we'll invite you into the room to ask questions. But we are recording this event. So if you do not wish to be seen, please take your cameras off. Please, everybody, take out your camera, mute it right now, and only put it on when you're going to speak. It will just help with everyone's stability and connectivity. The other Zoom protocols is that we are doing it as a webinar. So the key speakers and the signer will be in the first part of the talk, highlighted. And then afterwards, you can decide whether you want it gallery view, speaker view, you'll have more charge of it then. If you need captionings, we're using direct text. If you need the text link, it's going into the chat line now. Just click onto that and be aware that you'll have two windows open on your computer. Or if you're clever, you've got two computers and one on each. We want to make sure all your access needs are met. So if there's something you're struggling with, put something in the chat or email Rachel, whose email will go into the chat right now, and she'll do her best to support you. Right, that's all done. We're here to have the most fantastic set of conversations, and to have the three people in the room we have talking today, plus Alan, is such a joy. Richard, I've known for quite some time. He's challenged me to write a film script, and I have not let go of the ideas. So Richard, I will be doing it one day when I get a break. It's hard work I'm doing. Cheryl and I have gone back so long, I can't remember, and I've always wanted to work with her, and this is our first opportunity together. But I'm just really amazed to find out that you've done a lot of work with DAC before I took over as director. So you're a good ally of our organisation as well. And also Gail is one of the highly commended artists from the DAC Art Prize this year. So we're going to have a great event, and just enjoy it. Give us your feedback. Welcome yourselves into the chat. Tell us where you're from and make comments as we go through, but really enjoy it. And thank you so much for coming. And I'm going to hand over to the wonderful Alan, who is just flying in his role as a National DAC Visual Arts Officer. Thank you.
Around our pub. Welcome everyone. Just one last thing, if you want Welsh translation, if you click on the interpretation button at the bottom and then click on French, you'll hear conversation in Cymraeg. Okay. So I'd just like to welcome Cheryl Martin, Richard Butchins and Gail Howard along to our event today. My name is Alan Whitfield. I am the National Visual Arts Officer for Disability Arts Cymru. I am currently sporting a little bit of facial hair, brown glasses. I've got my headphones on. I have short cropped blonde hair. I'm wearing a blue jacket and I am 41. So we will ask, we've got four topics to look at. We've got about 12 minutes on each topic. So that works out about 4 minutes for each person to discuss in response, and I will lead the conversation. So if I could pass you on to our first person to introduce themselves, if you pass you on to Gail Howard, and she will introduce and audio describe herself.
Can't hear her. You're still muted, Gail.
Is that better?
Mm-hmm.
Brilliant.
Good. Hello. Sorry about that. My name's Gail Howard. I'm a 56-year-old Cardiff-based artist. My pronouns are she and her, and I identify as neurodivergent. I'm white, wearing glasses, I have my hair in a bun, and I'm sitting against a blank wall in my studio. In the late 80s, early 90s, I was diagnosed with manic depression, which is now called bipolar disorder. And the treatment of this has led to a chronic autoimmune condition and permanent brain damage through excessive use of electric shock therapy. So digital platforms aren't my best thing. So please bear with me, forgive me for any glitches or memory blanks. My work as an artist often references these experiences, but not always. It's kind of a core part of myself, but not always my art making. And I work a lot collaboratively and with collectives, which led to co-founding Made in Roth in 2009. At the time, it seemed like a necessity. There wasn't much going on in our area in Cardiff, and we, 3 artists and myself, got together and set up Made in Roth, basically to create opportunities for artists, to support artists, but also to make stuff happen within the local community. And we kind of deliberately avoided the idea of the white cube space, but now 10 years on, galleries seem to quite like us now. So we continue with the DIY ethos, but we also work in a kind of broader way on longer term projects. So we no longer have an annual festival, but the DIY approach is still central to the identity of the organisation.
Brilliant. Thank you, Gail. Okay. If we could introduce Cheryl Martin to everyone.
Hi, everybody. My name is Cheryl Martin. I'm based just outside Manchester. And I'm a middle-aged Black woman. Actually, I will be 61 in exactly 2 months from today. Slightly plump. I have very long dreadlocks, which I've wrapped around my head and which are black and hanging down on the right side of my face, a couple of very long plaits. I'm wearing a very bright red dress with a high neck, and I'm in my living room with a really nice sort of multicolored painting behind me and some fresh flowers that you can see and a big green sofa. And I worked with Disability Arts Cymru almost exactly 10 years ago in the run up to the 2012 Olympics on a show called Birds, which I worked with them for over a year, I think, and have really wonderful memories of. And I'm a director and a playwright and a performer. And as a solo performer in theater, I've been making shows about my own hidden disability, which is quite severe depression and borderline personality disorder, which they're now calling emotionally stable. I don't know why they changed the name. And I talk about, growing up that way and why did I grow up that way, which involves sexual and emotional abuse in childhood. And so a lot of my stuff it's very hard hitting, but I also sing and dance, and it can sometimes be funny. So that's a little bit about me.
Thank you, Cheryl. Moving on to Richard Butchins, if you'd like to introduce yourself, please, Richard. Mike.
Right. I think, can you hear me now?
Excellent.
Right. So yeah, well, that's just as well. My Bertie Wooster impression introduction didn't come through. It's probably just as well. I'm a how do I describe myself? I look like a 400-year-old goblin that's been kept in a jar of sauerkraut for about a year. Um, you can make of that what you wish, really. I think, if you can't see me, it's really better for everybody. I'm a filmmaker, artist, academic, idiot. Generally, I work within the kind of I work with current affairs and arts for television, attempting to shake loose some of the stereotypical preconceptions that they present about disability, and quite frequently failing to do so. But you got to try. I have an art practice in which I indulge myself by expressing my own personal creativity the way I want to. And I have done stuff with Unlimited. I did a thing in Japan, which was an interactive video installation, which won an award at Sheffield Documentary Festival. I've written a play, blah, blah, blah. And I advocate for a less fair world. I'm anti-egalitarian. I want disabled people to take the higher platform, because we've done a lot of stuff and most of it is not recognized by society. We have shaped the cultural landscape for the last 100 years at least, possibly longer. And so part of my PhD by practice, which I'm doing at Kent, is about attempting to expose this huge and significant contribution that people with disabilities, disabled people, choose your moniker, I don't really mind, have contributed to the shaping of culture. And oh yeah, I look like a bloke in a blue jumper with terrible hair that's got a bit grey, got glasses, and I haven't shaved for a bit. That's it. Hope that's all right.
Excellent. Thank you, Richard. Okay, so today we are here to discuss how do we attract the curators. So the first question that I want to ask our panel is, what really happens when facts meet? And once again, you're left asking the same question, the best intentions versus actualities. Would Richard, would you like to go first?
Okay, so what happens when reality meets
best intentions versus the actualities?
Oh, it's a disaster. I mean, of course it is. I mean, somebody, I don't know who, said the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and it sure as hell is. I think the thing about curating, the thing about curators and curation is it's become a kind of it's like a little world of its own. But I mean, it's one of those words now, like artisan, that's become kind of like taken over. And you can curate your own Spotify list, which I always thought was just choosing what songs you like, right? So the terms of curation is slightly debased in some respects. I mean, it's not a problem, obviously, disability art and artists. It's not a problem with the curator of 16th century art at the National Gallery, because all their artists are dead. I think the problem is that curators, like anyone else, I suppose, have their own agenda, their own political, they're like gatekeepers. So I've written here, basically a curator is like a gallery owner, is a gatekeeper, and they are subject to political and financial imperatives which influence their decisions. So I mean, we kind of have to ignore them. I mean, we kind of do. I mean, they're there. I mean, I think really we just sort of, poke them in the eye as we walk past and get on with it, because they're not there to help. I mean, I really mean this. I don't think they're there to help. They're there to present some sort of idea of their agenda or ideology. And so they have their menu. So, well, this year we haven't done enough of diversity. So Yeah, we could, but we can choose. We could do LGBTQ plus gender, or we could do people of color, or we could do disability. Or which one shall we do? I mean, I think, I think what happens is if we get disappointed, that's what happens.
I agree with most of what Richard is saying. I think that the curators, the problem with the curators is they're drawn from a really tiny slice of the population, and then they think that their judgments are universal. So what you get is a really narrow view of what art or anything else is, and yet it's labeled universal. So if you do have LGBTQIA+, which I am, or a person of color, which I am, or a person with, mental disability, with mental health issues, which I am, and, those things are considered niche. And, they might think that their audiences don't want to see this. Or, you get all sorts of stupid answers as to why they didn't do it. And, as you said, if all they're doing is a tick box, they have lots of little boxes they can tick. And if you're not flavor of the month this year, then that's too bad for you. But for what you can do about it, what Gail was suggesting when in creating Made in Roth, and just create your own thing. That was my solution to this problem as a person doing mostly theater, a Black person doing mostly theater, was to create my own little company. And as soon as we called ourselves a festival, all of a sudden everybody was interested. And that was because we actually decided we're not going to wait for you to choose us. We choose us, we support us, and we're going to create our own little world. And once we started doing that and putting things out there, all of a sudden all the gatekeepers were interested. And that's Black Gold Arts, which I started only 5 years ago. And the other company I work for, which is a Black-led literature NPO, Common Word, they started 40 years ago because a lot of mostly white working class writers up in Manchester, they decided they were sick of the mainstream looking down at them because, they weren't Red Brick or Oxbridge or whatever. And they decided to support themselves, do workshops for themselves, publish themselves, start their own magazine. And that company is still going 40 years later and supporting, not just white working class, but LGBTQIA+, people of color, and looking for people. So I think the solution to the whole problem of the curators is to bypass them and go create your own thing.
I agree with that.
Okay, brilliant. We'll just let Gail have a reply to that after Cheryl's laid the platform for her.
Can I say something? Did you just say that?
Yeah, go on. Yeah.
Sorry, I want to first take issue a bit with what Richard said about the curator solely as gatekeeper and this kind of obstructive element in all this, because I think yes, that happens, but I think that's a fairly, I'd say, quite outmoded view of what a curator does.
What I said, but okay.
Sorry?
I didn't say they were obstructive. I said they were gatekeepers. I'm not implying that they're obstructive in all cases. I'm saying that they are the gatekeepers.
I don't think they necessarily are. And the way you described them made them sound fairly obstructive. But anyway.
Could I just ask, what do you think they are if you don't think they're gatekeepers?
Who, me?
Mm-hmm.
I see the curatorial role as I think curators should work with the artists that they're curating. So I would see it as a supporting role for artists. And I'm not really interested in the idea of the artist being this passive, this person who creates work and then somehow the gallery and the curator do what they like with it. I see the curator's role as working with the artist to deliver what the artist's intentions are in the best possible way. And curators that operate in the way that Richard's describing are, I agree, completely sidestep them, just don't bother with them. But I think that there are artist-led spaces and galleries that curate that just don't work in that way, where the curatorial process is part of the creative process. And I think it's important that that's recognised, that curators don't just make these decisions about who's in and who's out. You know, they're not. I think really what I took from what you're saying is that you're talking about institutions, and that is obviously really steeped in hierarchies and kind of just like outmoded ways of working, but within that there are individuals who are working in with a curatorial practice who aren't working like that, and who are responsive and working with the artist rather than kind of acting as this in this gatekeeping role. And I would suggest you would only ever work with an artist-led space as in the visual arts anyway. I would just avoid a commercial gallery like the plague. Just don't work with them.
I hear what you're saying and what Richard was saying. And as I said, I agree with, artist-led spaces, artist-led organizations, but translating, because I'm not exactly in the visual arts, I'm more in the performing arts, and translating curator to our gatekeepers, which are things like national theaters and all the great big venues that suck up all the money. Those people and the reviewers and things like that, they do tend to stand in the way of who gets to call themselves an artist.
Right.
So, I mean, for me, that's why I sidestep them, is because I don't know about in your branch of the arts. In my branch of the arts, it really is a very narrow slice of the population who are making the majority of those decisions. And over the last year during the pandemic, evidently, according to the stage, 44% of the Black women who were in the performing arts have left in the past year. There weren't a lot of us to start off with, and now 44% of us can no longer sustain a living in the arts. So my job is, because I'm co-artistic director, like I said, of a small festival and of an NPO, my job is to constantly be figuring out how to make my funding go as far as possible and try to sustain people. And as a disabled artist, when I started doing my shows about myself and my problems, that, there are other younger Black artists who then followed and came out of the closet, if you like, as being disabled, and also so you need somebody to start, showing, modeling that, yes, you can be an artist. Yes, you can talk about this part of your life. Yes, but all that modeling goes nowhere if after the pandemic, the people who have the majority of the money sort of circle the wagons and close other people out.
That's very true.
Well, thank you, Cheryl. Richard, would you like to just tie this first question up for us?
Well, I'd like to say that I think we're also dealing here, specifically in terms of disability, with a quite a subtle but deeply ingrained implicit ableism around what people with disability can achieve, right? So, for example, when I point out a lecture I gave the other week, lecture, talk, whatever, that Cezanne is a disabled artist, right? Mm-hmm. That generally meets with a kind of, no, he's not. Well, yeah, he is. That's not the point. The point is that our society generally thinks that disabled people are not able to achieve work of significance or quality, right? And they don't ascribe the achievements of many fantastically great artists who were disabled. They don't achieve, they either ignore the disability or they just kind of like pass it by. They don't acknowledge that disability was a contributory factor, for example, and I always use this example because everyone knows who he is, for example, to the work of Van Gogh, right? There's absolutely no doubt that his disability was a contributory factor to the quality and the brilliance of his work. And I mean, that it's not a side issue. It's not something that, and he happened to be a bit mentally ill. It's fundamental to his work. And he also had craft, brilliant skill. I mean, I'm not saying, that you're just a great artist if you've got psychosis. It takes more than just that. But it's not, the thing about it is that our society generally, particularly the arts world, views work from disabled people as a product of a condition, right, rather than as a product of intellect, right? And that's problematic because and it's not just the art world, but it's to do with the position that disabled people are seen in society in general as a kind of small, needy group of people who take more from society than they give, and generally, as individuals who should be pitied and all the rest of it. And that puts us in a position where we can't have power and we have to sort of like take what's given to us because isn't that good. And I mean, and that's shot through the whole of the establishment and also the alternative establishment, for lack of a better word. Also, they just don't understand their own ableism. I mean, they don't understand that they're doing it, how they're doing it, and what the effect of that has on people. To be say, there couldn't be a Van Gogh today. If there was a Van Gogh today, he would be a patient, and his work would just be symptoms. I mean, so I think we've got a really much more significant problem, and that's why I think we need to scale the ramparts of the institutions. Do you know what I mean? We need our Bastille Day, right? We need our guillotine, and we need to kick the door in, which we can't, right? Because we're all a little bit lame and limping along, and we can't kick the door in. Can we give a ramp so we can kick the door in? You know what I mean?
I just wanted to say there was a comment. I'm reading the chat as well, and I guess Thomas Jones is saying the late interest after we called ourselves a festival and suddenly people were interested. Does that make their interest disingenuous? I don't know. I wouldn't want to speculate about that, but I have to say that personally in my own career, the best interest and the most support I've ever got has been from Unlimited or from Disability Arts Cymru or right now from Grey Eye. Those are the people who are actually giving me the really big, chances and supporting me in a way that's making a huge difference to my practice. So it's what, like Richard was saying, ableist people may not understand the ways in which they are ableist. People who are racist may not understand the ways in which they're racist. Unconscious bias is a real thing. And it does really color the way people make their decisions. But to constantly point that out to people just makes them upset. And then they get all defensive. And then you don't have a conversation at all. So I tend to talk about these things amongst ourselves and just deal with the mainstream however I can, because as I said, they have the most of the money. And so it's like, for me, it's about getting money to other disabled artists, other, LGBTQIA+ artists, other people of color. I'm trying to enable other artists' careers. So that's why this kind of conversation is important to me, because this is the only place usually where I get to discuss these things.
Brilliant, Cheryl, thank you.
Can I just come in?
Yeah, go on, Gail, no problem.
Sorry, I just want to say, that I agree with both Richard and Cheryl just on those last points, but can I add a sort of a practical response to that question, which is always ask for feedback. If you get knocked back, ask for feedback and ask them to be transparent with it. And organisations that say they don't have time to give you feedback, for instance, Unlimited was saying that this year. I don't think it's on to not feedback when you've rejected someone. Putting in an application is time consuming and really arduous and difficult. And also, I think the thing with festivals and galleries and people suddenly becoming more interested is that festivals are seen as being more accessible than galleries. And they kind of denote this idea of inclusivity and engagement. And maybe that's why festivals get a more positive response than a gallery, possibly.
Yeah, maybe that's something to do with the semiotic value of the word art gallery, which brings up certain preconceptions, where a festival, that's for everyone. So do we think we're making progress as artists?
In what context? You mean individually, collectively? what? Sorry, you just need to maybe expand.
I think collectively, I think because there's strength in numbers.
I mean, I would say that we're talking about a range of forms. So you've got performance-based art, for example, like sort of stuff that Cheryl does. You've got visually based art, like I do. You've got dance. You've got all kinds of things going on. I think the answer to that question would be yes. I think the short answer is yes. We're making progress. I mean, I would say so. I think we're still performing. I mean, in the bad way, the performative sense. Disabled people, there's a performative element to being disabled where you have to perform in such a way that you put the non-disabled people around you at ease, right? So they're comfortable with your disability, not that you're comfortable necessarily with it. And we have to do that all the time. And I think until we really can make some progress with the deep ingrained attitudes surrounding disability, which are there for a variety of reasons, it's always going to be difficult. Either we're a political activist movement, disability art, circa 70s, 80s, 90s, or we're individuals who are great artists but happen to have a disability. There doesn't seem to be much in between that.
Excellent. Cheryl?
I'm not sure. I think that yes, we are making progress, but as Richard's outlined, I think that the thing that I understand the most of what Richard just said is that the whole making people feel, comfortable with your disability rather than being comfortable yourself. As someone who basically I make my solo shows about my own mental health issues, but that involves self-harm and, like I said, abuse and suicidal attempts and being back in the old school asylums. And what I've recognized actually since working with Unlimited is that there was no safety net for me creating that work. So for instance, my first solo show, I actually always cry and fall apart during it. And there was no recognition that was happening. So for me right now, part of what we're working on, at least in Manchester, is getting well-being sort of embedded in the venues, in the staff, and for the artists and for the audiences. So for instance, people who do work like mine, and now I also have a counselor or a psychiatric cover as part of creating that work. And also it's going to be there for the audience in the future. And for participants, if you're asking people to relive difficult things, then you should have a counselor available, even if it's only over Zoom during the lockdown, or especially over Zoom during lockdown. So for me, those are the things that we're now able to start saying best practice is have psychiatric cover when you're asking people to do traumatic work. And that's a huge step forward.
Can I ask
Excellent.
Cheryl?
Thank you for that, Cheryl. Gail?
Could I just ask Cheryl a question about what she's just told us? I'm just interested in the funding angle of what you do and how you make sure that you have the funding to include those access needs in your productions.
Well, now the Arts Council says that if you have access needs, you can add them. Like if you're going for an under 15, then 15,000 is to create it, and then whatever your access needs are above that. So I might actually be asking for 20,000 quid, but the 5,000 that's going towards access doesn't count as part of the under 15, if that makes any sense. So for instance, you don't have to get match funding for access needs, or there's access to work, which I think a lot of people know about, where you can get, a lot of younger people in Manchester who are more clued up with this than me. They've actually got PAs now who help them do their work. and take on a lot of the burden of, you know, sort of admin and dealing with the world for them. But especially if you're going, oh, you guys have, I'm talking about Arts Council England. So I don't know what the rules are in Wales, but for Arts Council England, your access needs now, you know, basically are on top of everything else.
I'm just interested in that particularly because I've sent access statements in advance of working with particular venues and then been told that they can't work with me because they can't deliver on the access needs. And I'm guessing it was a funding thing, but I'm just interested in how. So yeah, that.
A breakthrough for me came actually during lockdown when an artistic director of a theater I work with a lot said basically that artistic directors could have well-being as part of their offer if they wanted to. If they don't, it's because they don't think it's important. So for somebody saying they don't have money, you've got money for everything else, but you don't have money to meet a person's access needs, that's just not for real. Mm-hmm. And when he said that, it was like, you know, it's sort of obvious, but that's the quote I now use. It's like, well, you know, an artistic director said to me that if it was important to you, you'd fund it. And it's also, as I said, I'm going to be 61 in 2 months. I really can't deal with, you know, sort of getting severely depressed while I'm creating my work and not having any support to do that. So during lockdown, I had to tell a director I wasn't going to do any writing on a particular show because I'm here sheltering alone, shielding alone. And I didn't have a therapist at that point. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'll fall apart all by myself. And so, like I said, at least up here, what's becoming best practice recognized is you can say to people, no, you have to have psychiatric cover because what you're letting the artist down, you're letting the audience down, you're letting the participants down.
Yeah.
I think that you hit on a point there, both of you, with regard to, I mean, I'm going to be a little cynical here, okay? So just bear with me. But the bottom line around this and diversity is that disability is expensive and costs money, right? So if you're a television production company or a theatre company or any other, whatever it might be, and you think, we're not quite diverse enough, we need some more diverse people in our, it's cheaper to hire a non-disabled person of colour than it is to hire a disabled person of any hue, right? So I've recently just made a film for BBC Two, and it was a big film, proper budget. And at the end of it, I'm like, right, you need to put some budget in for my access needs, support needs, whatever, it doesn't matter. And they're like, oh no, that's got to come out of the budget. And I'm like, no, it doesn't have to come out of the budget. You've got to add that on top of the budget. It's a reasonable adjustment. I had a big fight. I basically got to the point of saying, look, you know, you actually are breaking the law. Right? This is not optional. It's not something you can choose to do. You just fucking well do it. And I got some money in the end. But the point is that there's always this thing, and I can't help but keep coming back to it, but there's always this thing like, oh, disability is problematic. It's, I don't know, cumbersome, it's expensive. So if we could just sort of do our diversity without it costing us any more money and work our way around it, we'll do that. So access isn't an important issue. I mean, not that it isn't an important issue, but in terms of where it sits on any particularly big organizations' priorities of spending and all the rest of it, it's like something they'll deal with if it could be done in such a way as it doesn't impact on their bottom line or on their budget in some way. So I think there's not any real, I would say there's no real commitment to catering for disability in any way other than a superficial one. Well, we've put in a ramp. What's your problem? Or we had a disabled artist in our last year's open. What's the problem? We've got black roles written into every TV drama. What's your problem? Do you know what I mean?
I'm laughing, but it's not funny. But
what it is.
But I mean, that is some people's some people have that attitude.
But those people that have that attitude, and this is a class thing really, is that the entire arts world, whatever area you're looking at, is basically dominated by a small group of extremely white, extremely posh, extremely well-off people who basically they're the ones with the hands in the strings. They're the ones that control it. And I mean, why would you change a system that you've done really well by? I mean, what's your incentive? No. There's no incentive. No. You know? I mean, so a bit ranty. I apologise. I don't mean to be too ranty. There's also lots of good things going on, and I, you know, at other levels, I harbour this illusion of creating a virtual gallery where I can exhibit all these amazing artists who are disabled together as disabled. But anyway, sorry, I think I might have gone off on a tangent there. Apologise.
Oh, no, all good discussion. I think one of the things that I've noticed since I've been in the role with Disability Arts Cymru is Arts Council Wales are now letting you add on top access needs of your money that you're putting in for. So that's something that's come through since, you know, lockdown and stuff, which has been really interesting to see happen.
Yeah, there's more in the chat as well, that access to work can be applied for by individuals in Wales as well. And evidently DAC is going to give some Zoom sessions on how to do that. So, you know, watch this space.
Okay, so moving on to the next question. We've got about 17 minutes to go, so we'll have to be a little bit quicker. How do we break down the challenges of the masses expecting to see clean white walls in galleries?
Well, I'll go to that one first, since I don't exhibit in galleries that way. But we actually we're gonna try and take over the Whitworth Gallery in Manchester as a Black festival, and just take over the building and do a big outdoor festival that will do different things with that space. So that you might find a Black circus performer, for instance, in their main gallery. So you sort of, I would say you break that down. And I've always worked with galleries, but doing different things in them that are performance or creating poems and, you know, music that's based on a particular painting, so that you have a performance in that space. So for me, from where I am, that's how I work with breaking all that down.
That sounds really exciting, Cheryl, that project at Whitney. Sounds brilliant.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. We've had to put it off twice now because of, you know, lockdown restrictions and things. So it's going to be in 2022. But I really want to have fun with that and, you know, create, like, for instance, if you go to outdoor festivals, you very seldom see Black strollers, performers who just wander around the festival and do little pop-up performance. Almost no Black people do that. So we're going to have workshops to create some Black strollers and then let them loose.
That's what I just wanted to say, that this question about how do we break down the challenges of the masses expecting this white space. A white space is only one way to view an artwork. I mean, it is a way to view an artwork, and is very often the way that the artist has intended it to be seen. But there's loads of artists making stuff that doesn't have to be viewed in a white space, and that you can put right in people's way, so they just will come across it. You know, there's that whole the opportunity to encounter an artwork while you're in a shop, or, you know, while you're in the park, or while you're at the bus shelter, is just a really exciting way to bring art to people without them having that horrible feeling of them to go to a scary white space, which, let's face it, are frankly hostile spaces so much of the time, not just for physical access reasons. But I just think we need to think beyond this idea that that's the only way we can look at art, is in a white cube space. And it's possible to do. I mean, money makes it even better if you have funding to do it, but you know, you can do, especially if you organize and you work with other artists, you know, just work together, collaborate, and a collective can do more than an individual in terms of impact and engagement. And
I was part of something called the Intersect program for the British Council last year, and went to Australia, and it was basically diverse artists, and it happened to be all women. And the ones from Australia all had these artist-led spaces that were, you know, outside, like, you know, city center Sydney or whatever, out in Parramatta. And it was such a buzz. It was, you know, it was really a buzz, and they had all sorts of different kind of art, and it was really exciting. And so that, you know, I haven't been able to follow up on that because, of course, I can't go to Australia right now because of the pandemic. But boy, when I can go back, you know, intend to really look at how they've done that.
I personally don't have much of a problem with a white wall space. I think it's what's on the white walls that really matters to me. I don't know about the masses, though. I don't think the masses are interested in going to white wall spaces. Or, I mean, they really are not interested in art. I mean, that's not really the point. I think the advantage to us as disabled people is that the advantage to us of the pandemic has been that what we've been shouting for absolute years, right? Oh, working from home, video, all that stuff. That's all happened. It's all happened because the able-bodied wanted it to happen, right? Because they needed it. But either way, it's accelerated the pace of technology by probably 5, maybe even 10 years, right? And so, I mean, I've been working on a plan with someone who basically building a virtual gallery space, which won't be white wall. And it's quite interesting because some of the plans I've got are great. And I suppose technically I'd be a curator in that case, and then I'd have to obviously shoot myself in the head. But I mean, the point is that this technological advance is to our advantage. I gave a talk at the National Gallery a few weeks ago about disability and art, particularly about disability within the canon, the sort of, you know, those super famous artists from hundreds of years ago. But the attendance for that was, I think, that 900. Which I was surprised at and was pretty good. And I'm talking to them and said, look, you realize that your attendance was much higher by doing this online than it would have been if I was talking in lecture theatre at the National Gallery, because it's way more accessible to people from all over the country who, even if they could travel, maybe can't get the access. So I think there's some advantages to be gleaned, right, from the technological advance. There's a lot of things happening in the NFT space that I think will be really interesting for disabled artists. I think that whole NFT area holds quite a lot of potential. So there's quite a lot of the kind of virtual space. I think that it's just a question of getting the expertise in and knowing how to manipulate that.
Richard, can you explain what NFT is, please?
Yeah.
Not quickly, no.
Okay, thanks.
They are non-fungible. They're what's called you might have heard about them in the news and stuff. They're non-fungible tokens. So basically, it's a way of owning a piece of digital art, right? Even though the art doesn't exist in actual reality. I mean, the most famous at the moment is Jack Dorsey, who founded Twitter. Just sold his first ever tweet for $2.5 million. Right?
No.
So that tweet doesn't exist in the real world as an object. But
what is the benefit of owning it?
Sorry?
What is the benefit of owning it?
Well, the benefits, I would imagine in that instance, the benefits are that the person who bought it, or people or whoever, presumably think they can resell it. I presumably think it has resale value. But what's happening is that people have been buying art, digital art, and art via this process where you don't own the physical art piece because there isn't one. It's a bit like me buying one of Cheryl's performances. She goes, right, you give a performance, it's filmed online, and you go, I'm going to sell you this performance, Richard, and it's like £200. And I give you that token is a certificate of authenticity. It says, I own this performance by Cheryl. And I could then, sort of it's an extrapolation of the whole sort of Pokemon collectible card collecting thing where people collect these things. And so that's what it's about. But there are other applications beyond that, which I don't have time to go into it in this discussion.
So that was very, very well led into the last question for us, Richard. Thank you. So the last question is, how does Zoom 3D galleries accessibility incorporated into catalogue features in terms of increasing access? Do you see that as a way forward? We were supposed to put on an exhibition that was toured in Wales, and we ended up making a catalogue because we found that would possibly be more accessible. We put the audio description as a link on the digital, and then the catalogue we have printed, we put QR codes in so people could still gain access to the audio description. How do you think that has changed with the past 12 months?
I have a massive problem with online exhibitions, but I think that might be through my own inability to navigate the digital world generally. But I also find that it's important that we use the internet in as effective a way as possible while we don't have the gallery spaces in physical form. But there's no substitute for a physical encounter with an experience and artwork. And also, I personally, there was a gallery that I'm much more taken with this idea, and I know it's completely unfeasible for it to be a kind of practice across the gallery world. But there's a gallery in Utrecht that offered for people to phone them during lockdown, and they could have a telephone conversation with somebody who would describe an artwork to them over the phone, and it was the closest encounter you could get to that artwork while lockdown was on. And for me, that is way more meaningful and almost like the sort of counters the whole virtual thing, because it really is just two people, it's the artwork, the audience, and then one person mediating. And the virtual gallery is I find it a really difficult space to navigate.
Could I just say quickly, sorry to jump in, about the virtual galleries? I think to a certain extent you're misunderstanding the concept, because a virtual gallery, I mean, I could put a virtual gallery together, you could put a headset on, you would be the only person in that gallery if you chose to, or you could have a companion if you wanted to, or you could have a curator coming with you. You could go and stand in front of, say, for example, The Night Watch by Rembrandt, right? Full size, absolutely identical copy of it, and there would be not another single person in your way. There wouldn't be screaming kids or people eating ice cream, or you could see paintings that you would never have a chance to see in your lifetime.
Yeah, that is amazing. I agree.
In a way that for example, I could put an exhibition of every single Cézanne painting from all the galleries around the world that would never happen in real life. Mm-hmm. I mean, and you could also do stuff like, you could have like, let's have a Cézanne, a Mondrian, and a Rothko, because they all suffered from depression, and they all had, you could do all sorts of amazing things. But I think the interesting thing is that I think that there's a kind of, it's like the access needs, what you're saying. What you really need is someone to help you, give you access to that realm in a way that you feel safe and that you could understand. And I think that's part of what needs to be dealt with. It's like, it is a bit intimidating, and it's a bit arcane. And to be fair, quite a lot of people keep it that way because they like it that way, right? But actually, the access needs to a virtual exhibition, for example, aren't much different to the access needs to a real one. You've got virtual steps or whatever. You need a virtual ramp to help you get in there. I think it's possible. I don't think anyone's going to do it properly. All the big institutions, galleries have all got their online versions, but they're not really thinking about it in a totally kind of like alternative and immersive way. Sorry.
No, I think I've been going to a lot of those things. It's and they are doing this sort of, you can see stuff from all around the world in one sort of curated talk or whatever that you wouldn't normally be able to see together, but they aren't thinking of it in an immersive way yet. So let's hope they do. Again, going back to my own festival, Black Gold Arts, we just did our first virtual festival again because of lockdown, but we made more money because we said donation, for your donation, and we got loads of donations, and we got our first international audience because anybody could come in from anywhere. So obviously the access, and we did different sorts of things. You were talking about a telephone encounter with a painting. There's a woman named Stacey McKishi who was working with us doing workshops. She did wonderful sort of performance art down the telephone that was, you know, completely different. And we were trying to teach people how to do that, how to do, you know, how do you do storytelling across several different digital platforms. So we're trying to help people think of how do you make something interesting for the digital world. But what we're running up against now is that some people don't have data. So if you don't have the money to stream, then the virtual world is still not really accessible. So we're now going to try and figure out how do we help people who can't, you know, they can't just run to the library anymore and, you know, get online there. So how do you help people be able to get online who can't get online? So there's always some sort of access thing that you've got to think about and accommodate.
You keep running into the same fundamental problem wherever we go, which is the kind of how important is it to society that people with no money can get access to the internet? Well, they don't really give a shit, do they? I mean, they're not they're not productive socio-economic units, so we don't care. I mean, I think in my head there isn't two worlds. There isn't an online world and an offline world. There's just the world. And I think it behoves us to try and stay thinking about that. I think there's a lot of potential. I also don't want to see the end of bricks and mortar theatres, galleries, and all the rest of it either. I think they should all coexist together. I think it's helped us that the normies have had to use working from home and being in there. You know, it's helped us inadvertently. It wasn't their idea to help us, but it has helped us. The video conferences become accepted. Big companies have suddenly realized they can save millions of pounds a year on office space by making everyone work from home and all this stuff. But so where it goes from here, that's an interesting proposition. I think also, Cheryl, you should probably let people pay donations in cryptocurrencies. Just a tip.
If I understood Bitcoin, I'd be rich instead of poor. Andrea commented in the chat that one of the things I'm finding is that, yes, you know, I can get everybody to create wonderful digital stuff, et cetera, but the actual being able to go somewhere and smell it and see other people and walk around with a mate and, you know, just going to the, you know, I'm not even that much into traditional theater spaces, but just the thing that you go to an event and there's other people there and you have a drink and you have a chat, all of that is really hard to recreate online. You can have breakout rooms. We even did a rave. And it was a good rave too. But you know, it's I mean,
you can do that online. Fortnite does that all the time. It is possible. It's really possible to have social interaction and meetings and parties, all sorts of stuff. It does happen. It's happening in certain areas of that maybe perhaps because of our age and stuff, we're maybe not quite so aware of. But I mean, you know, that it is possible. I think the comment about promotes isolation and loneliness, it doesn't have to be that way. I mean, you know, you could meet up with 5 of your friends in different places, pop on your headset, and you all pop up in the gallery together. I mean, these things are possible.
I think there is, again, you say that there's no difference between the virtual world and, you know, the physical world. There's this one world. But I think, for instance, at Common Word, the literature place, one of the things we do are workshops. That's actually how I got started as a professional, was just coming to a workshop every single week. And those things are 60% basically social and 40% writing. And even I miss that. I miss, you know, that when I was doing my workshops, people would come in 45 minutes early with their meals and we'd zap them and we'd sit there and talk. And all of that is also a lifeline for, you know, people that might otherwise be isolated. And I want that to come back. I'm trying to figure out how to do it now, because it's going to be expensive with social distancing. We'll need to hire big rooms and things. And again, it's how do you keep the access that the virtual world has given, you know, disabled people with no money, who can't afford to come into town, and, you know, all that kind of thing. How do you keep all that access and not cut off other people? You know, how this balancing act, I haven't solved it, so I'm trying.
Brilliant. That sounds like a cue for a follow-up discussion, Cheryl. Thank you. So that brings a conclusion to the first part of this session. And we will return in about 4 minutes, so about 6 minutes past 5, and we'll have Q&A for the last 20 minutes or so. Okay, I'll see you in 5 minutes.
Alan, can you hear me? I can't hear you.
Sorry, I was on mute. Sorry, yeah, I'm here. You okay?
No worries. I missed the first couple of minutes of this because my dyslexia. I don't really use computers, and my missus kind of came in and there was a big fucking white thing in the middle of the screen, and everyone's on mute, and you obviously started before, although I was kind of sat at the beginning. Right, so you got some people that are talking. At some point, we're allowed to have a chat and stuff.
Yeah, it's just going to be Q&A now for the last 20 minutes or so once everyone comes back. Have you got a question?
It's quite interesting listening to people talking, and kind of like these obviously people have kind of moved forward with their careers and stuff like that. I'm obviously in a situation, well, not necessarily, I'm in a situation where I'm still a struggling artist. I'm going through things, and a lot of things are saying quite interesting. The only issue that I've got is because I'm dyslexic. One of the problems that I've got is I've got short-term memory. So as they're talking along, I think, oh, that's an interesting thing. I'd like to ask this question, but the problem is, right, a couple of seconds later, they're moving on to something else, and it's gone from my head. So there are some things I want to talk about. I'm kind of getting the gist of what's going on and what they're talking, how they're kind of going through bits and pieces. And there's a couple of interesting people that I'd like to have a chat to, like at some point. But we will get a chance at some area to actually have a conversation. Yeah.
Well, if you've got a question you want to ask, you can go first now.
Okay, that's fine. I've got loads
I've
of
got a question as well, and we'll have a chance.
Is that Doug speaking?
Yeah,
You just said dyslexic. I'm very dyslexic too. Do you have a mobile phone?
I do have a mobile phone, yes.
I put everything in notes as I go. Everything, literally. I've learned.
I tell you what, I'm so dyslexic. Me writing down. This is the second Zoom thing I've ever done in my life. Right, and writing. One of the things I said to the people on the first one, because they basically said to you, "Oh, you could write a note." The problem with me writing a note is that if I look back at the note, I don't know what I've written. I suffer very difficulty from dyslexia, and when it comes down to this, like the computers and mobile,
with your hands. I mean, writing on your phone, and you can do that through voice.
Oh yeah. Again, this is one of my other issues. Like all this is all new age to me. I'm 58 years old, and this is this is a new thing. Computers, phones. I got a phone because my missus forced me to get a phone. She said, "You need to have a phone." I mean, why do I need a fucking phone? If I'm at home, you phone me, I'll pick up the phone and talk to you. If I'm not at home, then I'm doing something else, and I'll pick it up some other time. So I don't know about computers. I don't know about phones.
I interrupt you. We need to get on with the second part. We have a lot to go.
Okay,
Let's hand back to Alan. Thanks.
Yeah. No worries. Yeah.
Well, we'll leave it open at the end, and you can carry on your conversation if you want to. Okay. So, is everyone back with us?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, Cheryl's there. Okay, so we'll got about 20 minutes for some questions. I'm going to go over to Doug, and he's going to ask the first question to the panel.
Hi. Right. Yeah, I'm quite interested in a lot of things that you're saying. I think one of my biggest issues, obviously, you've gone quite far in your fields and etc. I am still a struggling artist, and one of my problems is I'm dyslexia. So it doesn't matter what I'm doing, and it doesn't matter how good I am at doing what I'm doing. When it all starts falling to pieces because of my dyslexia, I struggle to promote myself, especially in this age of virtual galleries, this, that, and the other, because I'll have to get somebody else to do that for me. Now, the only person I got that to do that for me doesn't cost me a fucking arm and leg is my missus, and she's already got her own stuff to do, and she already does enough work for me. So this is the thing that I struggle with, trying to promote myself, trying to find myself, because I'm sure you're all aware, it's not, you got a problem, you're down the far end of the scale if you've got a disability, but being in the artistic world, it's not about how good you are, it's about being in the right place at the right time. So that's also an issue. I mean, so you're talking about money, you're talking about this, we can go on to one of the problems, I think one of the people were saying, one of the issues that we have is being able to fund ourselves. My main issue isn't about funding myself, not that I've got a lot of money, is having the access to all these new ways of actually exposing my art to the rest of the world, and not having the knowledge or the backup to do it, and not being able to get somebody in to help me do that. So
cheers, Doug. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, would anyone like to respond to Doug's question? Cheryl, Gail, Richard?
I only got the last bit, but am I to understand that you're basically, I lost my internet connection, and I'm currently Laura Harrison. That's my name on there. It says Laura Harrison. That's me.
Okay.
I don't mind. I'm happy. I'll be Laura.
Yeah. Go with it.
It's about money, right? And it's always about money. I mean, if you want to expose your art to the world, then
it's not always about money, mate. It's about access. It's about people getting to see the work. And if everything's been done online, you got virtual realities, and you've got no idea, no concept about to do that, then you're out of the picture. Do you mean? It's about being able to show your work to people. And if all the galleries are closed because of COVID, then how am I going to get my sculptures into exhibition spaces? it is about knowledge as well. And if my disability stops me from doing that.
Well, I mean, the only thing I could say is that, you know, hopefully Disability Arts Cymru might be able to tell you how to do that. And like I said, we've been running workshops about how to do Zoom, how to do stuff on, you know, digitally. And we're looking now to the future and just got funding to do a great big digital project that's an international one. So our solution, my solution to that is to train the artists. You're saying you don't have any idea how to do that. Then my solution, at least where I am and with the artists I work with, is to train them how to do that and make sure that they do have the access so that we won't be locked out. But I don't know what to say to you right this second, but hopefully maybe DAC can.
Do you have a website?
I've got a website that shows my work and stuff, but I don't manage my website because I can't manage my website. One, because I don't know how computers work, but also because my dyslexia.
Can I interrupt what you're saying? So can I just interrupt? It's Ruth here, the director. These are very personal issues to you, which has taken away from the whole subject.
No.
Alan will talk to you on the phone because we do care and we have got solutions.
Right.
So
I understand that, Ruth.
Task in hand. Okay?
Yeah, I understand that, Ruth. I understand that, but then what I was also. I was given the impression this was about kind of listening to how things are difficult in the art world and stuff, and how it's difficult being a person who's in that situation. I get that. I'm just putting my point of view across because surely this is about kind of helping us to a certain point, isn't it? And actually giving us some advice to push us in the right direction, isn't it?
And that's one of the things that I've spoke to you about, Doug, and we'll carry on with working out the best way for you to access, whether it's access to work and we can get them to support you, then we'll look at something else along them lines. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, cheers, thank you. Cheers. Next question.
Me, do you want Alan? Dave?
Go on, Dave.
Yeah, okay. I'm Dave, a white-haired, white-bearded, black-glassing, retired artist, photographer, writer. I'm wearing a check shirt. I'm not a lumberjack, but I'm still okay. However, I really enjoyed all the speakers in the panel, and I gleaned nuggets of wisdom from them all. But I find myself at a bit of a problem here. You see, I acknowledge and I'm proud. I live quite happily and confident in my disabilities. I am proud to be a member of the disabled arts community. However, I demand to be recognised as an individual. And I think there's a bit of a danger of stereotyping. The decision kicked off with curators, and I think we tend to have a master and servants approach sometimes, and we think that they're the masters and we're the servants. Well, it's not that, the relationship's not that simplicity. As I researched this, I looked at a book, it's called Image Takers, it's do the stuff like it, and interviewed fewer curators. Yes, they're all different. Yes, with big scale, they do act as gatekeepers in some cases, but they have shared things. And one of the things they share is the idea that sometimes the public doesn't realise where their work should be, whether it should be in a book or an exhibition. They don't realise what nature the galleries have, and so they approach the galleries with a lack of knowledge without realising if their work is actually a fit for that gallery. They don't do their homework, so to speak. However, you know, my question really is, I suppose, one of the things that they did say is that they disagreed on even was the fact that works presented should be themed. They all agreed on that. Some said it should be at least 10 pieces and current, but some people said it should reflect work from the past. But above all these things that I got from the sort of look into it, this one theme of the fact that we're not equipped when we approach galleries or curators. So on the basis that curators have a right to be acknowledged as people, I think rather than stereotyping, do you think we should perhaps go forward to them by doing our homework a bit more, realising if it's a fit for us, are we going to the right place, is it the right thing we need to do? And I'm going to address that question to Gail, actually, because I think she probably might have some thoughts on it, possibly, I don't know. So the question really is, do we approach the galleries in the right manner ourselves, or museums, or wherever we go?
I think that approaching galleries is a really difficult thing to do. Just start off by saying that I think it can be very daunting, and galleries quite often don't make themselves terribly approachable. And I also agree that the idea that that there is this kind of hierarchy where essentially the artist is almost at the bottom of it is kind of is back to front. I mean, none of it would exist without the artist. So, and I think that it's an outmoded. It is becoming less and less that galleries work in that way with the idea of being the gatekeeper. And oh God, I've lost my thread now. What was the what was the question?
Sorry,
the question is really: do you think that we as people approach the galleries in the right, as artists? Do we approach the galleries in the right sort of manner, taking into account that they are individuals with themselves? They've got their own particular ways of doing things, and in some cases, a lot of galleries, well, not a lot, but some of the better galleries, particularly the ones at the small end of the scale, and the big end, I suppose, they actually now are looking more, rather than offering an exhibition place for work for new artists, they're actually on a more of an advisory role. They're offering forums, folio forums once a month, so artists can go and present their work. The work's going to take a couple of years to get to some of these galleries, if you're lucky, so they realise this, and they're trying to educate artists outside of the role as an exhibition hall, just as to what is the best place for good work to go. So my question is, are we approaching them in the right manner?
Are we approaching galleries in the right manner? Artists?
Yes.
I think maybe it would be really helpful for artists to have more support in learning how to deal with galleries. And I think that art schools are kind of not doing their job very well with that. And I think also that what was I going to say? That the idea that galleries are recognizing that they need to have a wider role, in that it's not just about, they're not just presentation spaces, they should be supporting artists in the whole process of making the work and getting the art into the gallery and working out, as you say, what the right space is, what the right setting is for the piece of work, and whether it's a group show, whether it's a solo show, whether there's a thematic thread throughout the show that links all the work together, or whether it's through experience of each artist that has brought them together. And those are the kind of decisions that should be being made with artists, so that, for instance, I found a lot with open calls where they say it's an open call and you respond to that open call, and then actually it's not straightforward, and it's not George, this is George, that it's not as straightforward as it sounds, and that those kinds of things would be really useful for artists. Be supported in finding out the best way to approach galleries and what are the right galleries to approach. And this is why I keep banging on about artist-led galleries, because they are, we have shared experience, we understand as artists what it's like. And also just want to say to Doug that we are all struggling artists, there isn't a kind of, and also congratulations for doing your Zoom session. But yeah, you don't suddenly become this person who knows how to deal with this environment. The gallery world is frankly, it's a horrible world, I think, but sometimes you need to get your work in those spaces. And I appreciate that that's a difficult thing to do. And one more thing I just want to say about this conversation, in this last year, that there's a sort of irony in that the world generally is learning about how to live a sort of life experience that many of us have been experienced, that is how we live anyway, i.e. not being able to leave the house, or not having access to things. And that's where there's a huge boom in online engagement has come about. But also artists are working in they're going back to the idea of, and this is again for people like Doug, to the idea of locally organising and creating something. It might be a really small scale, you might just have something in your street where everyone puts an artwork in their window, or you know, and that is happening across the UK, and it's really exciting. Well, across, I mean, artists are doing it all over the place. So there's a way of sidestepping the whole issue of working with scary galleries and curators. But in answer to the question about are we approaching them properly, I think there's a lot of work to be done in supporting artists in dealing with galleries and funding applications. Richard,
Cheryl, anything to add to that?
Well, I'd say almost certainly not. I'd say artists almost certainly don't approach galleries in the right way, or the right galleries. Well, why? I mean, you see a gallery, you think, oh, that work chimes with mine. I'll go and knock on their doors if they want to show my work. I mean, galleries are commercial spaces.
Not always.
Primarily, particularly the small galleries. The nationally funded ones are also commercial spaces. Those galleries that are commercial spaces are interested in work they can sell, right? And so that is a limiting factor. I personally have never approached a gallery. I think that personally, I think unless you know the gallerist or are recommended to the gallerist by somebody who the gallerist trusts, you've got no chance of getting in that gallery. You know, you can walk up and down in front of that gallery with your artwork for 100 years. They still don't give a shit, right? I mean, we should help people by giving them training and say, look, this is how this system works. And if you want to get maximum response to the system, make portfolio preparation, writing letters of researching which galleries are the right ones to go to, what the opportunities are the right ones to approach. As Gail said about open calls are very rarely open calls. I mean, they're open in the sense that they'll let people send their work in, but what is selected is very rarely open. And it's kind of like the nature of the world, and to some extent. So I think we could help people, and it might be interesting to sort of set up some schemes where you say, like, if you're a visual artist, which is what you're primarily talking about, to approach a gallery, these are the way to do it. This is how you may get a look in, and simple some sort of simple training around that would probably be helpful. And I'm sure that that's something that someone somewhere can do. I mean, there is information out there. I mean, there are plenty of resources on the internet where you can say, which will tell you how to approach a gallery, how not to approach a gallery, and all that sort of stuff. But I think ultimately, in the end, it's who you know.
Yeah, thank you, Richard. We've got some interesting training hopefully coming up in the next 2 years or so that'll build people to be able to feel more confident in that sense. So keep eye out for that, and we'll see where we go. Okay, we've got time probably for one last question now from Andrea. If you'd like to ask your question, please.
Hi, thank you. Some really interesting conversation. I'll just give you a little bit of background about myself. So I've 20 years as a freelance artist, the last 8 years now as coordinator of arts in health for the Health Board, and mother of my son, who's 25 and has autism and learning disabilities, is a really talented photographer. A lot of the conversation obviously is about sort of galleries and promoting our work, I suppose. But I suppose one of the big questions for me is, why do we want to exhibit our work? And because it depends on what the purpose is, surely. So, for example, I commission artwork to go in hospitals, and you would think that partly because we're artists, we want to be able to show our work and that side of it, but also at the end of the day, we want to earn a living, and we want to be able to sell it. So, I'm sort of, I suppose I'm asking, why? And also, I think one of the big issues around disability and arts is the learning disability side. And Doug, I completely sort of see where you're coming from, because as a mother, full-time single mother working and have, my son who has all these difficulties, it's full-time supporting him in his processes, really. And I think that to make an application, you've got to be, good at writing. You've got to be, and I also think to have a gallery space, you can do that. You can have peppercorn rent, £20 for a couple of weeks to exhibit your work. the cost is in producing the work and that side of it, which is where you need the money. So I suppose it's why do we want to exhibit in the first place?
Because we want people to see the work we've been making in one form or another. I mean, there are artists who don't want to exhibit. There are artists who worked all their life and just kept all their art in their living room or whatever, and that's happened quite a lot. But I think there's a kind of need within an artist in general to want to say whatever it is they want to say, and then have people respond to that, engage with it. I can't speak for everyone, but I mean, I think that's why we want people. I mean, whether, you know, I did stand-up comedy for a couple of years, and what did I want? I wanted people to listen to me and laugh. I didn't just do stand-up comedy in my living room on my own. I mean, I did actually, but that's not the point. I mean, so I think it's about, I think the level of like confirmation that you're actually any good, and that comes from other people turning around your work and saying, yeah, you're good or whatever. So there's a level of insecurity built into all artists, and also a certain desire to show off. It doesn't mean that in a bad way. So why do we want to exhibit in the first place? Because we want people to see our work and to like it.
Yeah, so it's engagement.
Go on, Cheryl.
I was just going to say, obviously, I'm not a visual artist, like I said, but, you know, theater is a collaborative art, and a play doesn't really exist until it's up in front of an audience. But the reason why I did the solo shows about my own mental health issues is because I can't really talk about them to people. If I talk about them to my friends, they get deeply upset. My family just gets deeply upset. So the only place I've ever been able to talk about all that is through my writing. And that's probably why I started writing in the first place.
Okay, Gail, if you'd like to wrap up this question, you've got about a minute.
Well, I've just put it in the chat because I didn't know if I was going to get to say anything, but it's about status as well, isn't it? If you can say you've shown in a gallery, if you can put that on your CV, then it's good for certain institutions in the art world. But I'd say definitely it's, I would question your desire to show in a gallery if you have one and you never have shown in a gallery, because it's, you know, there's a lot of things about galleries that, well, oh God, I don't want to say, I sort of feel really conflicted about it, because you know, there's this gap between this idea that art, like Rich is saying, we want our artwork to be looked at, which is absolutely true. But why does it can be looked at outside of a gallery? Why, you know, you could say to a cafe, can I put, or a bakery, you know, can I put my paintings on the wall and so everyone sees them? Which you can do, which is what we do quite a lot here in Roath. But that's different to putting your work in a gallery.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think just to wrap up, really, I've seen Gail's festival in Cardiff, and the fact that they had installations in charity shops and stuff like that. There's lots of things out there. We've just got to think that sometimes the answers are inside the box. They're not necessarily outside it. On that note, we shall bring things to a close. So I'd just like to thank our guests, Cheryl Martin, Richard Buttins and Gail Howard. And I'd like to thank all the access support and people for turning up. Brilliant. Hopefully see you again soon.
Can I just interject right at the end? Sorry, Alan, you've done a brilliant job. Can we just all wave hands and a deaf wave through the room? So it's been great to have you all here. But I just want to reiterate, we have got things in place to support people around access to work, dyslexia support. You need to talk to the artists. So please, thank you for being in the room. Thank you for this great conversation. And thank you, Alan, for leading it in such a great way. Be safe, take care, and we'll see you in the flesh before too long, we hope.